Welcome to Mendezville Live. With something to talk about, here is Rudy Mendez.
What's going on, Mendezville Live? I got another show for you tonight. It's interesting, a little story we're going to learn about how you get there. Today's episode is brought to you by World Finance. When life throws unexpected expenses your way, World Finance is here to help. Whether it's medical bills, car repairs, or childcare expenses, a personal installment or title loan can help you take control and get back to the good things in life. Even if you have a low credit score or no credit score, they will help you get the money you need. Get started by applying today at their Mission location at 1600 North Conway, Suite A, Mission, Texas. They can take applications by phone at 956-580-4533, or you can visit their website at loansbyworld.com. They are accepting applications with matriculas, passport, or ITIN. You do not need to have a social to apply. All loans are subject to their usual credit underwriting policies. And by, of course, elect Adolfo Mendez. When you go out to the polls, please vote for my brother, Adolfo Mendez. So, Mendezville Live tonight. I'll tell you what, I don't know if anyone's kept up. Go ahead and comment about the football. Well, or volleyball, cross country? Is La Jolla going to have fall sports? I know that's been a hot topic on Facebook. You know, some parents reaching out, tagging. We'll see. I don't know. I still don't know the verdict. I haven't kept up. I went golfing today. Got beat. Man, that golf ball is hard to hit. But either way, enough about that. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. I'd like to introduce my guest tonight. He is currently a Texas A&M recruiter and a former Hollywood extra. Good old Rene Pena. What's going on, Rene? How you doing, man?
What's happening, brother?
Hey, Rene, thank you for being on the show. We're talking before the show started how you and me were living out in LA at the same time. And, I wanted to make sure that people understood, especially for the young students. And just, I guess I didn't touch base on this, is part of the show, or part of the reason I started doing this was to learn from different people, different journeys, different struggles, different successes. It's based a lot more in the coaching aspect, but I wanted to bring you on because of your story. At the same time, I know you got pretty ripped. I remember you getting, you were yoked. You still look pretty buff. So, when I grow up, I want to be as fit as you. But so how have you been doing, man? What's up?
So I've been doing good, man. Aside from the whole Hollywood stuff, I was in Michigan for about 10 years and I just moved back down. So I was actually working with the government for 10 years. So that was another curveball there. Not a lot of people knew where I was, but that's what I was doing for the last 10 years.
Nice. So then after LA, you moved up there?
Yep.
Orale.
Yeah.
Cool, man. So we'll get into that. But hopefully so now you're living where? Here in the Valley?
Yeah, I'm back in McAllen. I'm living in McAllen.
That's what's up. I like it. Cool, man. So let's get into the timeline, because we usually go through a timeline. So did you graduate from La Jolla what year?
2000.
Oh, you're younger than me. That's right. I totally forgot about that.
Yep.
Class of 2000.
I graduated with Montalvo and the Benoits. Val and Kenny.
Benoit. Yeah, that's right. So let's touch about that a little bit. That way people from the La Jolla area can get a little reminisce about that time. I remember you played sports back in the day, no?
Yeah, I played football. I was an offensive lineman and a defensive lineman. So back in the day, I was a little bit heavier. I was 200 and I think my heaviest was 265, maybe 270.
Oh, snap!
That was my senior. That was my senior year. Right now, I'm a consistent 185, 190.
Man, I'm trying to get to 185. I'm usually at 195. I should be at 175, but
Yeah,
whatever. It's tough. Man,
goals, man. Goals.
Yeah, it's tough for me. I'm not too disciplined in the whole eating. But so you play football. Did you play any other sports back in the day?
I dabbled a bit. Played basketball probably my sophomore and junior year, but I didn't play my senior year. And I played baseball. Baseball, I grew up playing baseball, so but I didn't end up playing my senior year. I played my junior year a little bit, and for whatever reason, I couldn't get football, track, and all that stuff. Playing multi-sports kind of caught into baseball season, and I didn't have the baseball class. So coming from football, going into baseball class, you're looked at as the outcast, and you don't have the class, and so so I just decided to stay strictly football.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that because some of the conversations we've had with other coaches that I've had on the show is, for example, what you just mentioned, like the outcast and you're not in the class. See, I'm a believer in, for example, yourself. You're done with football season, right? And you like basketball, you like baseball. I remember, and I'll share the story I have about you back when we were kids at Palmview Park. But before I get to that is, you're done with football. Now you want to be a baseball player. I personally believe you should have changed your schedule. You should have gone to baseball class or basketball class. And then, okay, so for example, you're a basketball player, your sophomore, junior year. Okay, your sophomore, junior year, you should have been in basketball class. And then after basketball season was over and you were going to be in baseball, you should have been transferred over to baseball class. That's just a very personal opinion of mine. Some coaches disagree with that. What do you think about that? Do you think you'd have been more successful like that?
Well, again, my background, and I'm real close with Kenny and Val. My background was always baseball, so I grew up playing baseball. So from like Little League to Mustang to to Pony, I grew up playing with Nacho, and I grew up playing with Silver. And to tell you the truth, we were always in the All-Star game. I mean, I was always in the All-Star game, man. So I personally felt like I was better at baseball just because I had played it longer. But we couldn't play football until 7th grade. So 7th grade, when you got your pads, you're like, all right, cool. Like this is nice. You know what I mean? But I still continued to play baseball. So at 7th, because we couldn't play baseball at 7th unless you were playing outside. So 7th, they kind of transferred into football. And then 9th grade was the first year I played. I think it was JV. I was playing on the JV for baseball as a 9th grader.
Okay.
And then football kind of took over. And I was playing, football class. So athletic was football class. And then that's kind of where they start separating basketball class and baseball class. So everybody had their own sport to go to. And I picked football because I enjoyed it. But you couldn't pick both. So like you said, whenever the season was over, you still had athletics and they were still expecting something of you, whether it was weights, whether it's track so that you can be better for football season next year. So the coaches were expecting that while the coaches were also waiting for me to go out to the baseball field. And being that I wasn't in the baseball class, I was coming after school and I was missing all the stuff that they were discussing during baseball class. So I was kind of like, I kind of knew that I was ahead of some of the players that were there. And there's some real good players, but I knew I was ahead because I had already played with them the whole entire time outside of school. So when I would come in after school, it was like, well, Pena hasn't been here the entire time. So how would they put me in front of, X or Z, you know what I mean? And I'm like, well, and I was a pitcher. So I got to throw in some pitchers. So they threw me in the rotation, but I was also playing field like third or short, But like I said, I didn't have the class, so it was always like Pena's coming in after. So, who was the coach? I think Yes was the coach at that time. It was kind of those, like, he had his baseball because he was baseball, and I remember Faya as well because he played or he coached all through like our little leagues. So he was always like in the opposition, and we were always competing against each other. So he knew me well. So he knew what I was doing and talent and the stuff. But it was always because I was coming from football that it was like, okay, you get to the back of the line until all the baseball class go through. So again, no hard feelings. You know what I mean? I probably would have enjoyed playing baseball all the way through my senior year had I not been kind of like, I say blackballed. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because I had athletics period with football. I was weightlifting and doing all that stuff. So I don't know if I would have done it any different because again, I did as a football player, and I was one of the smaller linemen. So I did get like first team all district, first team all area, you know what I mean? So
nice,
so it was an achievement, but I personally felt like I was better at baseball than I was football. And I personally felt like I would have gone somewhere, maybe playing baseball versus playing football. So again,
true. I would have to agree with you on that, but let me I'm gonna plug in the quick memory I have of you, and then I'm gonna ask you a question about the football, the athletics, the weight training, and compare it to what you did later. Because later you lost weight, you got ripped, So, but before I get there, there's the storytelling time. I'm at the Palmview Park. That's where I used to go ball up. You know, I'm playing Palmview Park. I don't know why. You know, I go down there and I'm gonna watch a little league baseball game. I get, you know, I don't know. We must have been 8th, 9th grade. You're playing in Palmview, so you must have been what, 7th or 8th grade, right? 6th,
Somewhere.
7th or 8th, somewhere on there. And I still remember it, bro. So you're there at the batter's box.
Don't tell me I strike out.
No, you don't strike. No, you don't strike out. You don't strike out. So I'm watching you, right? So I guess you must have been I don't know why I already knew you. I guess we must have played or something. I don't know why. But I remember the pitch came in close and you just like, oh, and you faked. I was like, that didn't hit him, but you faked it. And it's like, oh, and then you kind of like faked this. You started acting like you got hit, and then you kind of like took 2 steps, and you're like, you came back to the batter's box. At least you were honest about it, but I think everybody bought it that you had gotten hit until you finally, I guess, you know, as a kid, you're like, hey, wait a minute, you know, your conscience took over and said, no, I didn't get hit. But to this day, man, I always remember that. I'm like, hey, Rene, I remember that memory of you, you know.
That's it, man. When they come in close, man, you just fake it. If you get the base, you get the base.
Yeah, I mean, look at LeBron James, all that
That's
drama
right.
and all that shenanigans.
The flop.
Yeah, man. I'll tell you what. I don't. You know, it's interesting. I don't watch that much basketball anymore because I just don't. I'm not a fan of certain things like that. So I'm like, you know what? It's all good.
I think the game is definitely changed, man. So I don't watch a lot of sports now just because of everything that's going on, and you know, I don't get involved in sides and stuff. So I just basically, you know, concentrate on family stuff, and that's enough to keep me busy. So
for sure. So so let me ask you this, you know, and we'll get to family. So wait, well, now that we're in family, how many kids do you have?
So I got 5 kiddos. I got two stepsons. One's 20, one's 17. I raised them from the age of 7 and 9 when I got married with my wife, and then I had 3 girls. So one's 8, one's 5, and one's 3.
Oh,
yeah.
I have those right now, but mine's 6, 7, 5, and 3. So I feel you.
Pretty close.
They're a handful.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I had my 8-year-old sitting right next to me. She was like, "Dad, can I listen in?" And I was like, "You need to go to bed."
Yeah. Luckily, me and Atlanta have a deal. It's like when I have the podcast, hey, you gotta come to bed by 9, 8:45. I gotta go get ready.
Yeah.
So you know, and part of it is learning of, you know, like I said, coaches and different players. Like I had Adan Montalvo here, his success. I had Kenny Benoit here. I need to get Val because Val was here for a little bit when I had Adan, but I got to get him back on. But we always discuss the common thing with them is the grind that they had in college, and it's a very common thing where weight training was very different than high school. Their focus was a lot more. I guess now you're a college player, stuff like that. Can you give us a rundown of what are some of the biggest differences you saw from your high school workouts to the way you started working out once you were, you know, in college, and how you got when you were in LA?
Kind of hard to go up against the primos, you know. So I don't know if you know Adan and Eric are both cousins of mine. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, man, the difference, I think, is, again, when I was playing sports, like when I was playing something like football, it was more powerlifting. You know what I mean? I wasn't into physique. I was always under the impression that I was made a certain way. So, plus, Mom always put on, you know, some good home cooked meals. So, you know what I mean? Whatever was on the table, that's what we ate. So, again, the diet, I would say around the table, like down here, diet is, you know, good old Mexican food, man, which, again, it's good tasting food, but is it good for you? You know what I mean? So the difference is when I left, I knew that I wasn't going to play anymore. So I knew pretty much that sports for me was going to be like maybe intramurals, you know what I mean? Which I did play for the longest time with like Mage Requenes and Mike Requenes. And I like that we were like the intramural champions because we won every flag football game in Kingsville when we were there. So, but I mean, again, I knew that I wasn't going to go compete with the linemen, you know, the 6'6", 300 pounds, you know what I mean? It just wasn't written in the cards. So my senior year, I just started a different regimen, man. I just started eating more greens and introducing more greens, cutting out any wheat, cutting out any, I was doing a lot of reading and kind of finding the health products that would make a difference. One, because I was what I consider overweight, right? So a lot of people have that misconception when they see people, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, well, I don't have what he has, you know what I mean? Or you're reading Men's Fitness or you don't measure up. So a lot of it is like, hey, you know what? I'm not there. Like, how do I get there? That's early on in life. So you like have that how and what do I need to do to get there? So a lot of the times, again, I went through a lot of heartbreaks in my senior year. Well, a couple heartbreaks that again, and a couple of rejections because I wasn't in a certain crowd, or I wasn't a certain type or a certain look. I was like the friend, Oh, he could be my friend, but he's not like he's not that type, he's not the keeper, you know what I mean?
They put you in that jar. They put you in
yeah,
that jar.
I'm in that jar, like that 13 on 30, you know what I mean? That movie where the guy's a little fat kid, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So again, I just changed my eating habits and I started running, and I really developed a love for running. So anytime I'll be like Forrest Gump, I would take off. And I don't know if you know Coach Mendoza, right? So we take off and I'd take off, and he would like be in cross country teaching his kids to run to like the third pipe out in the middle of nowhere back behind La Jolla High where there was nothing.
Right.
So it was just me, man, just going out there and running every day, man. I would be out there by myself and it was hot and sweaty, but I just started shedding off the pounds, man, little by little. And then for a little while, I was like, man, Rene, what are you doing? You anorexic, you on that white stuff. And I was like, man, okay, so I can't, it's like you can't win, you know what I mean? So
right.
In college, things started to change for a little bit, you know what I mean? I got trimmer. I was lifting more for physique, not so much for strength. Like I said, I wasn't the strongest kid, so I wasn't competing for bodybuilding championships. So I was reading and I was exercising to stay fit and to kind of just work on certain muscle groups, work on the abs, So again, for me, it's always been just a lifestyle, like after high school, like, okay, what's real and what's not, you know what I mean? And I would look back at my family and it was like, okay, they're not really exercising. So I really couldn't like look at my dad for advice or, my mom or, so a lot of it just came from this self-education and basically learning what's good and what's not. And what's, a lot of it is trying to look good and start a new chapter of my life.
Right.
So going off to college, which I didn't even think I was going to college.
Really? So you started your transformation your senior year then, like when you really focused in.
That was like after it kind of set in that, hey, this is it. Like this is like my last year here at La Jolla, right? Because I played the football season and I was still 270, 265. Right. But after that, I wasn't playing baseball and I wasn't running track because there was no reason to run track. I mean, it's like the football season was kind of like the last sport I was going to do, right? So after that, I just kind of kicked into like it started off slow and then it just took off. So anytime people were playing other sports or doing other things, I was like running. I was working out, just solo.
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, I got to run with Bass. I used to run with Bass during my preseason and off season, during basketball, back in high school, and I too, I was a little overweight my freshman year, and then luckily through basketball, and I got to lose that weight. I was weighing in at 160 my senior year, but looking back at it, for those watching, is from the knowledge I've gained now is I wish I would have done more sprinting in the sense of basketball wise. Yeah. Jumping and all the knowledge I have now from the research, like self-taught, a lot of stuff I do now is sprinting would have helped me a little bit more in the sense of the basketball. Still run, but introduce that sprinting and jumping stuff from there. So you go to college, you go off to Kingsville, correct?
Mm-hmm.
How did you get there? Seeing that you just mentioned you weren't thinking about going to college.
Well, I wasn't exactly the brightest tool in the shed, right? So I took the SATs and the SATs or whatever we took in college, and one of the things that I look at now, and again, I've been out of the school system for a while, so one of the things that I noticed back then was we didn't have a lot of counselor, like kind of direction, right? The counselors wouldn't step in and say, hey, you need to do this, or if they did, we weren't paying attention at that time, right? As a senior, you're not really thinking the next step. So now when I do my job now, I look at the kids and they feel like they're not going anywhere. Like either A, I'm going to go be a welder, or I'm going to go work in the oil rigs and follow my dad or my uncles, or they're quick to make money on the side. But there's a lot. I've been to a couple campuses, and I won't say anything or mention any names, but there's a couple campuses that do have that focus where they do financial aid night. They do, it's mandatory for kids to do like the financial aid, the Apply Texas to get to a school, you know what I mean? And there's some campuses that don't drill that in. Now it's gotten a little bit better because there's some early colleges now that are implementing the school system. So they focus on a certain amount of kids. But back then there was no early college. So really, if you wanted to do anything, it was going to be on your own. And my big story was, or my reason for going to college was the fact that Kenny was going to Kingsville. So that was kind of like a late Hail Mary. Like I threw my application in, and quite frankly, that was the only application that I put in, and I got accepted. So I ended up going at the same time that Kenny did, and we moved in and we went to school together. He was playing ball and I was just there grinding, using their facilities.
You were roommates at the time, your freshman year?
So we didn't get roommates because of the fact that he was a ball player. So he was roomed. Right. Yeah. So the ball players got roomed with ball players, and I was roomed in with some other cat that, again, just freshman.
Right. Yeah.
The cattle coming in. So.
Right. The random. I had a random roommate too my freshman year. So then at that point, you go to Kingsville, you play intramurals. Man, it would have been nice to have played you guys back in the day. The Roadrunners versus
we were called the Border Bandits, man. You can ask the Requenes brothers about that, man. We ran shop there at Kingsville.
Nice. Well, when did we? It would have been nice. It would have been nice. It would have been cool. That little La Jolla. I know. I ended up. I don't know. I remember if I played against him or we were in the same tournament. I know Joe Ramirez and Gus. I forgot Gus's last name. But they were with that STCC back in the day with the Scatbacks, I think they were called. We ran into them at the regional tournaments. I got into those regional tournaments back in the day. But those are fun times for intramurals, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I'll tell you what, from the coaching part is sometimes when that those 7th grade PE classes, those 8th grade PE classes, they're not athletics, but I always see how the responsibility of a coach of making sure that those PE guys and girls, they still got to learn a little bit of skill sets, because the ones that do go to college, they're going to be going to the rec center. They're going to be playing intramurals, or they're going to be playing at, the Friday afternoons or whatever it may be. Those, the rec centers are there. And I got, in my mind, I was I don't know if you know this, but when we were in LA at the same time, I was working at Loyola Marymount. I was an intramural director, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm at the gym Friday afternoons, and I'm watching the kids that weren't the athletes in high school, but they were pretty, they were decent. Yeah. And they're playing basketball. So I always go back in my mind. I'm like, wait a minute. I got to make sure that those kids, those are my PE kids, and I got to make sure those guys are ready to have a good time when they get to college. Not necessarily compete at a high level, but, be able to enjoy a sport or whatever it may be. But I'm glad you mentioned that. It takes me into that tangent for college. So you end up at UTSA. Walk me through. You get to Kingsville. What's your major? What's going on? And then you end up at UTSA.
Man, so I get to Kingsville. My first college semester was a college semester. It was a freshman college semester. It was horrible, man. I mean, it's a learning lesson. I basically I drank too much, partied too much. I failed every class, didn't show up. I end up coming back home. My dad says, "Hey, time to get up, 5 a.m. And my dad works in construction, or used to work for the longest time. So we get up at 5 a.m. He's like, "Man, this is gonna be your life. You don't want to go to college." And I'm like, "Man, there's got to be something else." He's like, "You know what?" He says, "If you want something different." So I registered. He says, go back to school. And I was like, "Man, how am I going to go back to school?" He's like, so we end up talking, and I end up doing some research. I'm like, you know what? I got to sign up for some summer courses, to make up for those grades and then get back off of academic probation or whatever it was called, right?
So you fell out of the fall semester. You work in the spring. You go to that summer.
So I fell out fall, and I basically drop every course. I'm thinking, I drop it, no deal, nothing happens, right? But some of them were too late, so they kind of stayed on my transcript after like the 12th class day or whatever. So I didn't know, and I didn't really, you know what I mean? I was like, all right, whatever. Financial aid paid for that, for that half a semester of partying. Right. So then I go back the spring semester I did okay, but I'm still lacking the credits to get financial aid the next year. So the summer comes along, and that's when I go back and I work with my dad. And he's like, "Are you going to go back to school?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know if I can." He's like, "Well, is there any way you can go back? Or are you going to just come and work with me? Like, what's up?" He's like, so I ended up enrolling in STC. I took 3 classes that summer, and I ended up, I guess, I ended up passing them. I won't say I aced them, but, got some B's and maybe a C.
Help that GPA.
And then I transferred them over, and they said, "Okay, well, you're good to come back." So I came back for round 2. So I want to say I was there for a year or half a year or something. Again, my memory fits me right. I was there for a year, so that was my second year. And then a good friend of mine reached out and said, a good friend of mine that I met in, or I didn't meet, but we had gone to school. I don't know if you know Horacio. He wasn't in athletics. We just became good party buddies. So we ended up hanging out.
You talking about Horacio Vasquez, or what's his last name?
No, Tijerina, I think it is. Tijerina. Again, didn't hang out with anybody, but we hung out together and we ended up, partying together and stuff. And he says, "Hey, no. This was down here that summer when I'm going to school." So we ended up becoming good friends. And he's like, "Hey," he calls me the next year. He says, "Hey, I'm going up to," because he was at UT Pan or whatever. He was going there. So he's like playing it safe. He's going to school here. And he's like, "I'm going up to UTSA, and one of my other friends is going to UTSA too." And I was like, he's like, "Do you want to go?" So, man, I was like, I told Kenny, I said, "Hey, man, I'm going to San Antonio." And I was like, he's like, "What?" I was like, "I'm going to San Antonio, man. We're just going to go out there and live it up." So I ended up transferring, go to San Antonio. And I was there a year, man. But UTSA was a bigger campus. So I sat in auditoriums with like 300 people. And I was like, again, I wasn't showing up to class, but the classes were easy because it was 300 people. I mean, nobody knew who you were. So you just fit the grade. And so I ended up going there for a year. I got a job I got multiple jobs. I think I was a server at a Mexican restaurant. And then I was can't remember well. I was doing sales or something like that. I was working at a liquor store. So again, I was pretty busy. I was just hustling, grinding, going to school. And living up the San Antonio lifestyle, you know what I mean? We're at downtown.
I'll tell you what, man. I swear by that lifestyle. Bro.
Oh yeah.
Those 4 or 5 years for me, from 1999 to 2005. Oh my God, what a great time.
Yeah.
And I got to UTSA right off the bat, and I'll tell you what, I still remember there was my first test. I guess I didn't look at the syllabus. I mean, I'm still wet behind the ears. I just go to class in my backpack. I sit down for another regular class, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, a test. I'm like, what? We have a test? And then this girl pulls out a Scantron, and I was like, hey, what's that? She goes, this is a Scantron. I was like, what? Do I need that? She goes, yeah, you need this to fill in. I was like, what? I didn't know what a Scantron was. I didn't know we had a test. Man, it was sure enough. I got a 66. I still remember it was my first grade. It was a 66 in some American history class. But I do understand that auditorium, man. It's intimidating. Just so many students. You're a freshman or a sophomore, junior. You're like, what? It's intense.
And nobody knows anybody. You don't. I mean, the chances of you seeing somebody twice is like.
Yeah.
You go to class and you're like, I don't remember you. Who are you?
Yeah, man. It is intense. But you were. So I remember you wearing your letters. So you joined a fraternity while you were at Kingsville.
So in Kingsville, I forgot that. So in Kingsville, my sophomore year, my second year in Kingsville, before I transferred, I joined a fraternity. And it was Phi Beta Sigma. It's a primary black fraternity. And we're on the yard. And again, I'm having a good time, right? I'm the only Hispanic in this fraternity. Everybody knows who I am. I'm stepping, for those of you who don't know what stepping is, look it up. It's, it's choreographed dance,
pretty
all
cool.
that good stuff. So we're doing all that. I still keep in touch with all my fraternity brothers, right? I mean, it was a good time, So when I go over there, there's no Sigmas on the yard.
No, there's no
Sigmas. There's Teaks, and I actually pledged Sigma Chi first. Sigma Chi.
Yeah.
Sigma Chi was the first one. I went to their orientation night. But their idea, their idea of Rush Week or whenever they they go out and they kidnap you and do all this stuff, and we were going cow tipping, which again, it just didn't fit with me. You know what I mean? So I was like, you know what, this is just not my Kool-Aid. So I kind of dropped off and said, you know what, I'm out. And then a good friend of mine that was a football player, and he was like right across my room. He was always throwing parties. They were having parties at one of the nightclubs, and he's like, hey, we're throwing a party, you're invited. It was just it was a cool experience. So I was like, you know what, let me go out there and experience that. And he said, hey man, what do you think? So I still remember when they asked me when I went to orientation night, they're like, hey, why do you want to join the fraternity? I was like, the parties, man.
At least you were honest.
I was like, hey man, you guys throw some cool parties, man. I said, that's what I want to be a part of. You know what I mean? But later on, obviously the community service and all that good stuff, it was again, they're like brothers to me, man. We still serve the community, go to San Antonio, and we still hold events and do all that good stuff. So, I mean, again, even in LA, I joined the grad chapter and we did a bunch of stuff. We went out to Big Bear. We did a bunch of feed the homeless, so we still kept up with that. Again, being a part of a fraternity has its perks, man. And definitely when you go somewhere else and they still treat you as a brother, a family, you know what I mean? Like it's definitely like eye-opening, you know what I mean? Coming from the Valley where you're like, the only family that I have is the cousins and primos and aunts and uncles, everybody that just joins around a party. And then all of a sudden you're like, I can go to this house and they're like, yeah, man, sleep right here. This is my bed. You know what I mean? Like whatever you need. So it was cool.
It is cool, man. It is cool because, I was part of the fraternity. I mean, I was there with the Delta Sigma Phi. And, my brother and so was Rod, the mayor of Peñitas now. And we got introduced to that world. But it's interesting you mentioned that how when you were in LA, I go over to Indiana State to work on my master's. And sure enough, there's my fraternity's there, Delta Sigma Phi. And I go out there and sure enough, it's like, oh, you're Delta Sigma. It's that camaraderie because of that. That's bond, what you went through, the history and all that stuff. So me personally, I highly recommend people to join fraternities. Of course, make sure you have your grades, not just for the parties. There's all these other perks and all this student development that comes with it that you really don't know what's going on, but it molds you a little bit. It helps you. But I highly recommend it. I know you're recruiting now and for A&M, and I don't know what kind of talks you have about that with students. But and we'll get into that just so we can kind of talk to parents and the viewers to kind of give them advice on that. Now, you graduate from UTSA then?
No, so I go back to Kingsville. So I go back to Kingsville.
That's why I lost track of you. You left.
Yeah. So I left.
You were at UTSA for what? 1 year?
I was there for 1 year, and then I came back to Kingsville. Why? I like the smaller classroom. And Kingsville was a smaller campus. I felt like, again, I knew the professors, one-on-one if I had a question. Again, it was just, I didn't know that later on, as you settled into your major, the classes shrunk. I don't know if you know what I mean? Like when you're
they did.
when you're starting in your basics in any 4-year or big university, the auditoriums are full, right? And then when you start settling into your major or your, whatever it is you're going into, then it starts shrinking down, and you're like, okay, these are the guys that are the girls that I'm going into to this major with. So again, I was like, you know what, I'm out. You know what I mean? Like I'm going back to Kingsville. So I ended up going back to Kingsville. I think I had a girlfriend then, so it kind of worked its way, in there. So we went back into Kingsville. She went to Kingsville, and that's where we were at. So. I went back. I graduated from Kingsville in 2004, and then I joined. What did I do after that? I joined a uniform service company. So I was doing sales for uniform. I don't know if you know Cintas, UniFirst, Airmark, all those people that service all the stadiums and so. Right. I was doing that for about no, that was later. Give me a second. I'm rewinding back. In 2000 I graduated 2004. I came back to La Jolla. There you go. I came back to La Jolla and I became the truancy officer for La Jolla High. Okay. So I was there for a year, and then I left. And then I left in 2005. So 2004, 2005, I was a truancy officer, and then I left to go to Border Patrol. I was Border Patrol for a
snap.
year. Yeah. So I was Border Patrol for a little less than a year. I didn't necessarily enjoy the green machine. It didn't fit right. You know what I'm saying? We come from a long lineage of I got family in Mexico. You know what I mean? People trying to make a
Right.
living. It just didn't feel right. So
Right.
I ended up leaving. I went back to school. So I came back to Kingsville in 2006, and I went and got my master's from 2006 to 2008. I got my master's in counseling.
Oh,
Um,
nice, man.
yeah, so I got my master's, and in 2008 is when I joined that uniform company. A friend of mine said, "Hey, I'm making money, selling or renting uniforms, blah blah blah." I met the manager. The manager liked me, hired me. I was selling all that stuff in Corpus and in Kingsville, and then I ended up transferring down to the Valley once I graduated in 2008. So I
All
came back
right,
to the
nice.
Valley. I
Yeah,
came back to the Valley in 2008, and then that's when everything kind of changed around, and that's when I took. I think it was the beginning of 2008. I ended up in Hollywood.
Okay. So you go through the typical grind of you graduate college, you're trying to find a job, you get a job, you go to master's, you're trying to, I mean, it gets to a point where, you graduate. If you don't have a career job, you're just trying to find a hustle to make money, right? And,
Yep.
Iron Mark. So what is it? Give us a rundown of what was it? What moment, the day that you just said, I'm going to Hollywood? How did that come about?
So, a lot of people don't know this, but I have good friends of mine that run the what is it called? IMTA, which is International Model Talent,
Okay.
whatever. They run that here down in South Texas. Johnny and Albert Talent, Models and Talent. They do like an IMTA, which is basically where you pay and you kind of have to do certain things and act and have a monologue and all this other stuff. And they take you and you compete with other people, and then there's agents and there's managers and all this other stuff there to kind of find new talent.
Oh
I
wow.
don't know if you know, like Ashton Kutcher. If you look
Mm.
up Ashton Kutcher, he was one of those that went there as a model and they got picked up, and then his career took off.
Right.
If you know the guy from like what's his name, the guy known as Stifler
Oh yeah. I don't know his real
American
name,
Pie.
but yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Stifler.
another one. He went into IMTA basically as a model, and then took off. Their career took off, in different directions after that. So they basically go there, they get scouted, and then they end up going into Hollywood, and then they spiral, and then that's where it goes. But my then girlfriend was into that, and she was going into the IMTA competition, and I was just basically attending the IMTA as as a supporter.
Right.
So before I left, the talent, my good friend Johnny and Albert said, "Hey, why don't you just take some headshots with you, and take some photos or whatever." And I took some photos, whatever, half dressed in a pool and all this other stuff. I'm like, I don't really take photos,
So
right?
I'm
And
assuming at
granted,
that time, I'm assuming at that time you were kind of ripped.
so
You're in
granted,
shape.
yeah, granted, before I would never take off a shirt, and now all of a sudden, right, I'm like, okay, well, I've been working for something, you know what I mean? So gladly the shirt comes off, and gladly we take photos, and again, I look at them now, and I'm like, wow, those are like cheesy photos, right? Like, what were you
Yeah.
thinking? But I go, and I'm sitting in a crowd, and they do their thing, and they compete in different areas and whatever, and then all of a sudden, I get approached by a couple of people, and they say, "Hey, are you here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm here, but I'm not competing. You have a headshot?" And I was like, "Yeah, I got a headshot." So I pull out a headshot. Again, I knew nothing about the industry, nothing having to do with anything, right? I'm just there. So I give him my headshot. It has my number in there, contact. I probably gave out like 10 to 15 cards while I was there, like just on the sideline. So, and meanwhile, everybody that's competing wasn't getting the attention. I don't know if it's a money thing, or a lot of people want to go to Hollywood but don't have the chops. You know what I mean? So it's kind of one of those where you have to weed them out early. If you're a
Mm.
coach or if you're a talent search guy, you have to kind of say, "Hey, you don't have it." But a lot of people make money in doing that, right? So hey, if
Right.
you want to come on, like, I'll take your money, I'll take you up there, and if they say no, like, molo, right?
Right.
So
Was it- to
again,
make the
gladly
money.
I didn't have to spend money on that, so I just basically took off and so she gets a call back, I get a manager, and then we end up moving, right? So I transfer with my job, the Airmark, the uniform company,
Right.
to California. So I'm working a job, right? And meanwhile, I have a manager, and she has a manager, agent, all that stuff. She's doing her thing, and then I'm doing my job, my full-time job, and I'm getting called left and right to go to auditions. So I'm getting called, and
Nice.
I'm like, at some point, I'm like, man, I'm going to work, and then I'm skipping out work, and I'm going to an audition.
Yeah.
And I had never taken any acting classes before. I never taken any like no modeling classes or anything like that. So I'm just going in there, and they're saying, hey, read this. Hey, read this. Hey, here's the here's the, and I'm like, all right, and I'm seeing like people, they're practicing in the background, and they kind of get into their zone, and they need 10 minutes to practice, and I'm like just reading it off, and I'm like, all right.
Right.
So did a couple commercials, got called back. Funny thing is, I was on All My Children. That was the one where I got all the script and stuff. But one of my buddies, and to this day, his name's Felipe, and he knows what I'm talking about. But he gets a call to go to All My Children, and I go with him because his car breaks down. So I go with him. I take him. He's like, hey, can you take me? I got an audition with All My Children. I was like, all right, cool. So I go in there. And I'm sitting on the couch. I'm waiting for him. He goes in and he meets with the casting director, and they're talking, whatever they're going over stuff. And the guy comes out and he says, okay, I'm done. And I'm getting up. He's like, are you next? And I said, no. He says, what do you mean? Are you not here for the audition? I said, no, I was just giving him a ride. He says, you have a headshot? And I said, yeah, I got a headshot, right? I just brought my headshot.
Right.
So I hand him over my headshot. He says, come on in. And he says, are you bilingual? And I was like, yes, I am. And I said, I speak Spanish, I speak English. And he's like, awesome. He says, so when can you start? And I was like, whenever. I was like, I can start whenever. So I ended up getting the part. It was a reoccurring part of a nurse. So I was on All My Children for like, I think 8 months or
Hey, that's pretty cool, man.
So I'm a nurse, right? And I got a couple under fives. That's why I say I'm like a high profile extra, right? I'm like there next to the doctor saying 2 words, and sometimes they cut me out, and sometimes they but they pay me. So I got my SAG pretty quick, like the SAG card or whatever. And then I met some other people there that were cool, some buddies that introduced me to some other buddies, and we did little like short films, little indie films. I was doing like what was it, CSI Miami, CSI Vegas, and I was doing like a lot of extra parts where I was like the special agent, the police, the bad guy, you know what I mean? So I was always somewhere in there, you know what I mean? I didn't get like any major roles. Again, I was very new to the industry, so I didn't really know a lot of the stuff, and I wasn't taking classes because I was still working a full-time job. So the whole time I'm working a full-time job and I'm making these auditions, and then I'm going to the castings, and then I'm doing this, and then so they're kind of seeing my face doing other things, and they're looking at me like, wait a minute, you're supposed to be working. So anyways, at one point I had to I ended up quitting because I was like, I can't do this job and do this. So I was getting sent all over the place to do all this stuff. So but in that acting, I met a friend of mine through another friend that used to be he was a Navy guy. He was a special operations guy, and I don't know if you remember 2009, there was a guy by the name of Matula Adalab, which is the underwear bomber in Detroit. And this guy basically signed up to be an air marshal. So he was an air marshal. He was going off to training, and I met him at a nightclub, and we were like talking. I was like, where are you going? He says, I'm going to DC. They just called me yesterday. They offered me a job. They're hiring. And I was like, really? I was like, what do they do? I was like, oh, they travel all over the world. They basically prevent terrorist attacks, blah, 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 whatever. And I was like, that sounds cool. So he's like, all right. He says, well, you want in? And I was like, sure. He's like, all right, I'll call you. So we lost connection. And then he calls me like the next year. He says, hey, they're hiring again, man. It's another wave. I put in all my stuff. He gets all my information. And the next thing I know, I'm going to like Vegas to do like the physical. I'm going to, all these places to do all this, like the background and all that. And then that's when I ended up leaving Hollywood to go to Michigan.
Oh, yeah, Rene. But it's interesting you mentioned that because, I mean, I guess you already had the kind of background from the Border Patrol agents, right? You already had kind of like a little bit of that. Talk to us a little bit about how tough, because see, I lived in LA. I mean, I wasn't making money, man. The intramural field, I had to leave it because we don't get paid a lot. They require masters. I'm like, man, LA is just too expensive. It's fun. It's fun. I go to Vegas, San Diego. I got to have some pretty good experiences while I was out there. But man, boy, is it tough with that salary, man. What kind of struggles, what kind of grind did you have with your job? And then like, can you go through some of those?
So I mean, I was living in an apartment. It was a 2-bedroom apartment, and it was 4 of us. So again, that'll tell you. And we're living in Toluca Lake, so rent is like $2,500 for like a 2-bedroom or $2,800. So it's pretty steep. I mean, I had a salary for my job, but then also had the grind of acting. So I was getting paid from both, and we were able to make it. I mean, decently, right? You're still day-to-day grind, but when I left, even like working on set 16, 14 hours, 18 hours, you're still getting, $500-$600 a day, you know what I mean? And it's not, when you talk to all these people, like when you're waiting on set and when you're talking, like even when I talked to Arlene, it was like, man, you have to literally grind every day, different jobs. So I mean, I'm sure she'll tell you if you ever get her on, like you have to go from one job to the next job, unless that job that you have is legit and paying you big bucks to be like there and only there. Most of the people out there are grinding 2-3 different scenes. Like, Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, you're on CSI. Tuesdays, Thursdays, you're on All My Children. Like, you have different shows that you have to be on. You know what I mean? Like, so I was getting called. Plus, while you're on those shows, you're like, you're on there with your agent or with your manager. Like, hey, I need you over here. There's an audition. You need to be here. So you're like grinding for commercial spots, for print shots. Shots. I mean, anything. So you're grinding for everything. So again, it's not like down here you make, I don't know, 40, 50 grand and you're okay because the cost of living is so low. Over there, I mean, you've lived there, so that the cost of living is expensive and you're not making all that much. I mean, even if you're like, they call it a struggling actor or a working actor, I mean, you're literally working to live, like, and you really have to enjoy the craft. If you don't enjoy it, I mean, again, most of these actors are like serving tables, they're bartenders, barbacks, so they got stuff going on at all hours of the night,
Yeah, man, I bet. Just to give you a heads up, I think your earpieces are cutting off. I think they are right, but I can hear you. I can hear you perfectly well.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, just
okay, cool.
Turn.
Oop.
Don't worry, it's fine.
I got you.
You good? All right.
Yeah.
So and that's a big thing because I think everybody that sees Hollywood, or you're in Hollywood, you're in LA, you're in the movie, or you're in the show. Oh, you made it, but it's not that. See, I didn't know that it's that hard to make it. Like you have to be on 2-3 shows at a time. See, that's something I didn't know.
Yeah. So you're constantly grinding, man. Again, it's not what everybody cuts it out to be, man. Like I said, if you really enjoy the craft, if you really enjoy the acting, the artistic side of it, then yeah, man. I mean, again, if that's your passion, my wife was there for a couple of years too. And she was doing her thing there too before I was there, 7 to 2008 or 2009. So she was doing her thing and she got, plenty of gigs, you know what I'm saying? But it's not enough to support yourself. If you're not full time in it, or if you're not like the 1 or 2% that, that's making the big bucks,
right? You're
just constantly grinding.
So that's what I was going to ask you. So then the only people that really make the big dollars are the consistent, the main guys, the main actors, actresses.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm sure
I got a bunch of friends that do like, they do like they're like the guys that do the stunt doubles, the driving, the Call of Duties, they're all on all that stuff. They do all the recorded stuff, the movements.
Yeah.
But they're, again, one show to the next show to the next show to the next show. And I would ask, like, I was like, man, how much are you making like a year? Like, how much did you bring in last year? Like, how much did you bring in the year before? And I was expecting like 200,000-300,000. Like, they're like, well, 60, 70. I was like, and that's worth it to you? I mean, again, if you love the craft, if
something that you see yourself doing for the rest, you know, and if you're like wanting, it's like a struggling musician.
Yeah, you're waiting for that big break.
You might not ever be discovered, but if you're discovered and if somebody likes you enough, then
Yeah, I know. I ended up joining when I was out there. I think it was my second year. I ended up joining one of those social sports clubs. You know, they had kickball leagues, they had softball leagues, they had different leagues. And I joined a flag football because that was my thing. You know,
Yeah.
flag football. It was funny because most of my team were all writers. They were all in Hollywood of some sort, show, something. I was like, and you know, they start talking. I'm like, oh, really? And it was interesting because it was tough, man. It's not easy. That was my very first, like, kind of from the very outside, like, you know, I got to meet some people, but man, it was not, there was nothing, they didn't glorify it the way you think, like, oh, I'm a writer for this show, or it's tough.
almost everybody that you meet out there, man, no matter where it's at, they're there for almost guaranteed. They're there for the business, man. They're there. You know, they won't tell you what. They might tell you that they're on some show. You know what I mean? They might brag a little bit, or maybe they'll make it seem like I made a movie or an indie. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
still doing stuff for free, like just because. Like, I would get calls and I would meet people, and they're like, "Hey, we're doing this indie. You know, you want to be a part of it?" And I was like, "Sure, whatever." You know what I mean? Like, they weren't paying. You know what I'm saying? But if you really want that lifestyle, no matter what kind of movie it is, like, you'll just be in it. You know what I mean? So, but I was like, I gotta live. Like, I don't have a trust fund. I don't have anything to go off of, so I gotta make money. Like, so.
Well, so then are you, like, if we search you on IMDb, you're in there?
Yeah, you'll find a couple. You'll find
Nice.
a couple. Yeah.
Hey, that's pretty cool, man. That is pretty cool. I like that. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, you'll find a couple. I think one of them is, again, like I said, an independent film I did with, it was called The Summer Massacre, and it got like this award for the most kills. Like, the most kills in a movie. It was like, you know, it was one of those Guinness World Record book, like 130 kills. Like, I'm one of the guys that gets destroyed on there, you know. So again, it's just some of those things that you do, man. And again, I'm still good friends with the directors and stuff, and they came down here and shot something the other day, and they called me. They shut down McAllen because, again, it's just cheaper to shoot down here.
Right.
So they called me, and they called my wife, and they're like, "Hey, you guys want to come and shoot?" And I'm like, with everything going on, I'm like, I'm not going out there, man. Like, again, I don't mind it, but I'm not going to expose myself just yet. For, you know, call me later on, maybe next year, and we'll do something. So
I got you. Man, so that was recent then.
Yeah, that was just he just hit me up last weekend or 2 weekends ago.
Nice. That's pretty neat.
And again, I don't dislike it. I mean, it's definitely something that I enjoy doing, but it's not providing for my family. So it takes a back seat. So
no, and I'll tell you what, though, when you talk about family, and now that, you know, we're grown up, and the mentality of your mindset, you know, you were young, you know, I was young. LA is very suitable for you being, I mean, you girlfriend or whatever it is, you're young, no kids. Now with kids, you know, priorities change. So of course we you know, you understand that the COVID situation that we have going on. I know I reached out to a few friends of mine from LA and California, what they're going through. It gets tough. So you go to Michigan, you do. So when you're in Michigan, that all that time you were doing that stuff with the Marshall stuff.
Yep.
How intense is that, or what is that like? Like we see in the movies that you're on a plane all the time, or what is that like?
I don't know if you've seen, what's the name of the movie with Liam Neeson? It's like
oh, I haven't seen that one, but I know what you're talking about.
I got the copy and I got it signed by him, but it was cool. But again, we had training in the same facility as the Border Patrol, so we went to Artesia, and it was like an 8-week or 9-week training. Our shooting requirements are definitely up high because obviously the environment that we work in. And then we go to New Jersey for another 9 or 10 weeks of training. So there's a lot of training in that. And again, physicality is definitely up there. So my lifestyle was already suited for that. You know what I mean? Like, I was already training. I didn't know what I was training for, but when that came along, I was like, okay, cool. Like, you know, there's some people that struggle and don't make it. And I mean, for me, it was like, I enjoyed it, man. I always wanted to do something like join the military or something like that, but God had a different plan in my life. So I ended up going to Michigan.
Cool, man. Man, I'll tell you what though, when I lived in that Midwest, I did not enjoy those winter months. Man, it was tough. But
So, so for me, Michigan was definitely not on my highest. Like I'd never been to Michigan before, so going there was a complete game changer. Even when I first accepted the job, they said, "Hey, you got Detroit." I was like, "Man, I don't even know." I know it's like on the top of the murder like charts. That's about it. I said, but okay, like and with the government, you can't really bargain. So they're like, "You want the job or not?" And I was like, "All right, cool, let's go." So I ended up going to Detroit. But the cool thing about that was I was in a major international hub, so I traveled all over the world. So I went to
nice.
Asia, Africa, South America, Europe. I mean, you name it. Several times. I was probably in Paris almost every other weekend.
Nice, man.
I
So
was
you
in
got to
London.
travel.
Yeah, so I was in London every other weekend. I was in Ireland. I mean, I made several trips across the Atlantic, and then Asia several times, Hong Kong, Bangkok. I mean, you name it, I probably hit it.
Wow, that is pretty cool.
And within the U.S., I think I hit every major city more than twice.
And so you're basically on a plane. That's your job, kind of, sort of. Yeah. Cool, man. That is, hey, and that's good for the viewers in the area. So they can be like, hey, wait, that's a job opportunity. That's one career avenue. That they can pursue.
Yeah, I
Who
mean,
knows?
definitely. It's there was a select few. So to say that there's many, there's not.
Oh,
You know what I mean? So
so
it's
it's tough.
it's not like Navy SEALs or anything or special forces, but it's definitely tough to get in. It's definitely tough to stay in. A lot of the guys that we trained with were, I mean, they came back in 01 when the 9/11 towers happened. So that was one of the things that kind of changed the course of life, right? So I didn't know that would change the course of my life later on in 2009, which is the reason why the Air Marshal program got kicked up.
Right.
And that's basically where I kind of transitioned. And I remember having this conversation with Arlene because, like, again, Hollywood was not where I wanted to be at. But I was like, hey, man, I'm going to go into the military or I'm going to do something different. And then this came into the picture, and then it kind of took me in a different direction. So, again, it's definitely out there. I don't think a lot of people know about it. I actually met some of the guys while going through the Academy of Border Patrol back in 05. And I got rejected because my background at the time, they were like, what's your background? When you go to an interview and you're not qualified to do the job that they've been doing. So if you go and you sit in a room with like operators, right, what we call like former Navy SEALs or former Special Forces, and they're like, what's your background? And you're like, well, I worked at a liquor store, or I was an actor, right? You know what I mean? Like I was on some shorts or whatever, or I'm a sales guy. Like they're like looking at you like, all right, next. Like, you know what I mean? Like not even military background or anything. Like that. They're looking at you like, who's this kid, right? So I got rejected, man. But that's when I learned about it. And then it's
I see.
Crossed back in 2009 after that underwear bomber incident happened. And I went to LA and I met that guy that was a friend of a friend of a friend that was there for the industry. But he was a Navy guy. And so he kind of put me in contact with the guys out in DC. So again, I always say God has a purpose and a plan.
Yeah, man. Look at that.
To get there. And I was so again, I came around full circle. And in LA, everybody will tell you an interview is based on your panel, man. If you can jive with your panel, it's like you can almost tell right off the bat. So when you jive and when they ask you what are you doing, everybody says, okay, well, what do you do? And then when you tell them, they're like, oh wow, that's awesome. So when I had that interview the second time, and they asked me, what are you doing here? I said, oh, well, I'm on this and this show or whatever. They're like, what? Tell us about it. And as soon as that hook went in, bro, I was like, we're not even talking about anything else.
Right.
But obviously leading up to that, they knew because I had done my PT test before I interviewed. And I ran my mile, which was the mile and a half, which was the course, one of the courses that they have you run. I ran it in like, I think it was like 7.5 or 8 minutes.
Oh, man, you're flying, bro.
I was flying, but I had been practicing that the whole entire time, not knowing, again, I'm running like 3 miles in like, 17, 18 minutes. And I'm like, this is a piece of cake. Yeah. Right. So I dressed to impress, man. And I had already knocked that that stuff out. So when I knocked that out, they literally, what they call the supervisory air marshal in charge, which is the SAC, was a marathon runner. So when he saw my time and I went into his office, he had like all these marathon mugs that he had completed. So he's like, "Oh, you think you're fast?" And I was like, "No, sir, I don't think I'm fast. Do you think I'm fast?" So it just full circle, man. Like I said, it just came around. God had a plan, and I ended up in Detroit for the last 10 years.
Man, I'll tell you what, I'm a big believer in that, man. It's just, this destiny, you're all set up.
Yep.
It's accidents, but it was all predestined. So talk to us a little bit about, in the last, we're almost to a close. Talk to us about helping people in the area get recruited, what requirements they need to be successful. What's going on here with higher education, man?
So I think, again, when I came back, and it was all timing, I left because I felt there was a different calling in my life. So I came back to the Valley. I'd already been everywhere. So my experience and what I've been through, and when I come to the Valley and I come and connect with the kids that I know grew up just like I did, or growing up just like I did, I come and offer kind of that light, you know what I mean? Like, hey, there is light at the end of the tunnel. There's something else that you can achieve. There's something else that you can strive for. So when I talk to them, I recruit, and I take a look at the kids here, and they really believe, the majority of them, that STC is all there is.
Right.
And I'm like, why just STC? So the majority of the applications that we get, and again, I work for Texas A&M. But my program is a grant-funded program. So it means it's grant from the Department of Education, right? Okay. So I don't have any, I work for a university, but I don't necessarily just push for that university. All my requirements is to help kids get into post-secondary, whether it's people from senior year or from college, or even 19-year-olds that have dropped out that are going back in, or veterans coming back, from wherever, and they're trying to get back in education. Like, I can guide you with the financial aid process. I can guide you with the Apply Texas. Ultimately, it's up to you as the student or the kid or the adult to go back to school, right? But I can help you bridge that gap and make it a streamline. But I try to tell kids, like, hey, man, there's a whole different world out there that you can get to see. And my experience coming from, humble beginnings is one that I like to share with everybody that I come in contact with, man. So again, it's I work for Texas A&M, but I can help anybody from a senior to 19 to above, anybody trying to get back, trying to get a GED. I can help you guys, and also.
What kind of requisites, like, do they need certain documents, or what kind of stuff? Like, let's say, they're gonna meet with you. What kind of stuff do they need?
So, I mean, again, it's usually we find that we're helping out more high school seniors, and all we're providing is just services like help, like financial literacy PowerPoints, things to get them ready for the next step. Or if they haven't even thought about school, they really don't need anything different, as long as they have a game plan as to, hey, I'm going to college. Okay, where are you going? Do you need any help with the Apply Texas website? If you've never seen it, we create you an account, we create you a profile, and they're like, okay, this is how easy it is. So we go a lot to like the options, the different schools that may, again, a lot of the kids don't think that they're going anywhere. They're just trying to finish high school. I'm like, hey, you know what? There's more. Do you want to become a welder? There's a certificate program. Do you want to go to a technical college? Do you want to go to STC? Do you want to go to UT? You know what I mean? Like, stop thinking that you're in this box of like, hey, I'm barely trying to make it, when there's a lot more out there. So we help you with like financial aid. You know what I mean? Because a lot of parents down here, you'd be surprised. We go to a financial aid night and they're like, the parents don't really know. So we say, hey, bring in your tax return, and I'll guide you through the process. I'll help you. Go and fill out all that I can, and then just get your blessing on it. And then, hey, your kid's ready to go off to school. So those are the services that we help with on that end. You know what I mean? Just kind of basically guiding them and helping them fill out and transition from high school. And like I said, I can help anybody from 19 to 20 to 30 that's trying to get back into college. You know what I mean? And those are the simple things: Apply Texas, the financial aid, the scholarships. You know what I mean? Those type of things.
So you're kind of like a guy, like a mentor, making sure that they do everything correct.
So they call my position a success coach. That's what they call the position.
I got you. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, where do they go to reach out to you?
So they can go to Texas A&M Kingsville, because the Kingsville branch is what covers the South Texas. So they can reach me at rene.pena@tamook.edu. So that's usually the best way. Email me, rene.pena@tamook.edu.
I see that. So that's repeat that one more time, just in case people want to see that.
Rene.Pena. So RENE.Pena, PENA, at Tamook, Texas A&M University, Kingsville.edu.
I got you. And then they would reach out to you and email and let you know, hey, can you help me with this? I'm 19. Yep. I'm a senior. I'm 20. I want to go to college. These are my ACT scores. How can you help me?
And right now we're helping because the grant, the way it's set up, and we're in the middle of rewriting it, but the grant, the way it's set up, it's basically targeting Hidalgo County and Willacy County. It was written like that several years ago, and we're basically rewriting it to help the entire South Texas, from Star all the way across. But the way it works, because Hidalgo County is the biggest county, we're targeting Hidalgo County and Willacy County. So right now we're in the process of rewriting it. But if you live in the Hidalgo County area, and if you're wanting to go to school, if you've been thinking about going back into school, if you're a senior ready to graduate, hit me up. Like I said, if you want to go to Kingsville, cool, right?
Right.
I like the campus. Nothing wrong about it. If you want to go to A&M, again, depending on what you want to study. If you want to go to STC, UTRGV, I can help you. Usually they have a lot of people like in school already, like high schools have college counselors or whatever already there. Right. If you don't have anybody helping you out, you can always reach out. I can send you in the right direction, or I can help you out myself, depending on what the situation is or what it is you want to do.
Is there any restrictions on certain schools that you can't help, or you help anybody? Texas school?
Yep.
Nice.
Any Texas school.
I'm glad we talked about this. Is there anything else you want to mention on this segment for the parents, the students? Because what I'm going to do is I'll record this, I'll download this to my computer, and I'll just cut this last segment for people to watch it for the educational purposes of it.
Yeah, I mean, again, as parents, what we want for our kids is for them to obviously do better than what we did, right? To strive to achieve more than what we did. As a parent, if you don't understand or if you don't believe that that's possible, listen, it's out there, it's available. All you need to do is ask. Just asking. Ask just like you would ask for directions. If you're lost, again, use me or use anybody else as a GPS to guide you in the right direction. If you want your kids to attend, don't ever say that it's not possible, because we grew up with a mindset of, well, I can't afford it. You know what I mean? I can't afford it. Can't go to school because you can't afford it. A lot of the mindsets that we have is we can't afford things. The question to ask is, how can we afford it? And there's grants, there's scholarships, there's financial aid that even if you don't make a lot, you can still have your kids qualify for those grants, scholarships to be able to go to school. If that's what they want. Again, don't ever limit yourself to your environment. Don't ever limit yourself to what other people think you can or can't achieve. Have faith in the system, have faith in the fact that there's people here that have gone and been other places so that they can guide you or your child, he or her, into the next level so that they can possibly achieve more things. And so we're not stuck in this generational curse or generational thing where we believe we're only here and we can't be up here.
Right. So I guess what we need to realize that it's not that hard. It's actually kind of easy. You just got to follow the certain steps, huh?
Again, I was lost for the majority of my beginning. And I was still able to make it. Right. I was still able to achieve something, but I was lost for the majority of the part. But again, in asking and in dealing with all these things in my life, I was able to gain that knowledge and to basically, again, like I said, see the world, because there was a plan for me that I didn't know of. Right. But in that, it's like asking the people that have been through that for help, for key nuggets or golden nuggets, so that you can achieve more, so that people from the Valley can really, really see. Again, I've been all over the world, and I've taken my family all over, whether it's, not obviously all over the world, but I've taken them to different parts of the world so that they can see. So my daughters, my stepsons have seen more than just being in the Valley. And again, we offer programs where you can get in and we can mentor you, and then we can offer you a trip to a university, and you don't have to pay anything out of pocket. All you have to do is have your kid participate.
Nice.
And we can take you, because we're a grant funded program from the Department of Education, which is a federal grant, and we can take you to Houston, we can take you to UT, we can take you to a game, go watch a game. Last year we took a couple people to go see the Stros play. And you would have thought you took them to like Disney World because they've never been outside the Valley. You know what I mean?
When you take them, you take a certain number, like a group of 5, 10.
Again, the more involved you are, the more, again, just like anything else, the more you reply and the more we see that you're committed, you know what I mean, to the process, and you're in a certain bunch that, hey, you know what, we want to go. We usually take about 20 to 25 people, you know what I mean? Because there's a kind of like a student to teacher ratio. So there's only so many kids that we can take. So that's why we take like 2 or 3 trips throughout the year. And I think now when I joined last year, we're implementing a program where we can take students to DC on a regular. So DC, New York, hit all the major milestones, because again, I got friends that I met at the Capitol to give us some good tours at the White House, visit some good places out there. So
that sounds so cool, man. Thank you so much for that insight. Rene, anything else, big dog?
That's it, man. I appreciate the time. Appreciate the phone call, man. Again, like I said, maybe we can do this a part 2.
Yeah, let us know. Let me know. Hey, I was excited to hear about your journey. Yeah. I thought it was a cool journey. Hollywood. We were there at the same time. I mean, granted, I will say in closing, or before we close, is people, like, for example, you're there at the same time, I'm there at the same time. It's not that easy to, everybody has their own grind, their own hustle.
Oh, yeah.
The city's so big. It's crazy, man. It's crazy out there.
Yeah, it is crazy, man. Like I said, it's definitely a hustle and a grind, man. Every day is a different journey. Again, there's so many people, so many people from all over the world just flying into that specific town, because that's what it draws, And if you go and you see like the Oscars and the Grammys, that was my first thing when I went, and just to shed light on it, you see all these actors and actresses walking the red carpet. What you don't see is the homeless people right next door, standing or peeing on the side of the road. You don't see that because they cut that out. The camera's like this big. All you see is this. But when you're seeing it there, when you walk down the strip, I mean, it's just like anything else, like walking down McAllen. So don't think again by any means that you're like, man, that's awesome, I want to be there. You know what I mean? Like, if you really enjoy the craft, then yeah, obviously go ahead and take your shot. You know what I mean? Go out there and do your thing. But don't have the expectations of like, wow, this is where I want to be. You know what I mean? Or this,
Right. It's that 1%, like you said, it's that 1%.
That 1 or 2%. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Rene, man, thank you so much, man. Have a good night. I really appreciate you being here, man.
All right, brother. Take it easy.
Later. All right. So that is Rene Pena, Coyote alumni, La Jolla Coyotes, man. That story I have of him, that memory when he was playing Little League baseball was pretty cool. Great guy. I remember when I was in LA, he was in LA, and I kept up with him kind of like through the social media at that time. It wasn't what it is now. I got to see some of his photos, and he, doing what he was doing. It was pretty cool. I will say it's pretty interesting the way we now know that he's out there to help students, high school seniors, 19, 20-year-olds that want to go to college. Give him a call. I'm going to make sure I try to get this segment only in that piece so people can see it, be aware that he's out there to help. Anyone out there that needs the help, they can reach out. So I'll go ahead and I should have that posted up here in the next few days. So hopefully you enjoyed the show. Hopefully you learned a little bit about what he does, and people out there can take advantage of that program. And tonight's episode was brought to you by World Finance. When life throws unexpected expenses your way, World Finance is here to help. Whether it's medical bills, car repairs, or child care expenses, a personal installment or title loan can help you take control and get back to the good things in life. Even if you have a low credit score or no credit score, they will help you get the money you need. Get started by applying today at their Mission location at 1600 North Conway, Suite A, Mission, Texas. They can take applications by phone at 956-580-4533, or you can visit their website at loansbyworld.com. They are accepting applications with matriculas, passport, or ITIN. You do not need to have a social to apply. All loans are subject to their usual credit underwriting policies. And by my brother, Adolfo Mendez. Vote for Adolfo Mendez, Agua Sud. It says May 20th. There's an old picture. It's coming up in November. Please vote for Adolfo Mendez. The guy wants to make a big difference. I talked to him. You know, he wants to listen to the people, wants representation. He wants to make sure that those areas that he's going to represent, that they get heard. So highly recommend to vote for Adolfo Mendez. Guys, have a good night. Hopefully all you guys enjoyed it. Take it easy. Later.